So we're talking about starting your job search. If there are attendees that are a little bit more experienced, hopefully some of this can be useful for you as well. But obviously the gear towards this is anybody new to their career, early in their career, just graduating in what is now a pretty uncertain time. So what do you do when you're starting your search? I think there's a laundry list here, but a few key components. Be grounded. You know, take a day or two, think about what you want, think about what you're looking for, think about who your support network is going to be. Don't run into a job search, just like the advice would be, don't run into anything without doing your proper research, clearing your head, getting that headspace right. You know, in any endeavor, freneticism is always something that people can pick up on, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. You want to, even if you are a little uneasy or you've got the butterflies, you want to come off as feeling like you've got your stuff situated. So make sure to talk to your inner circle. And when I say inner circle, both personal and professional. For a lot of you new grads, there may not be a huge professional network yet, but that doesn't mean that the restaurant manager that you work for when you've been waiting tables, or, you know, the carpenter, or whatever you've been doing, your internship, go to those folks. Those folks have run successful businesses. They are in the middle of running businesses. And just because they may not be aligned from a skills perspective of what you're looking for as your career trajectory, they still have life experiences that are going to be really, really valuable for you. I think it bears mentioning, and Ryan will probably corroborate this later, someone you already know more than likely holds the key to your next job. Many of you will get jobs by sending an application into a posting. Many of you will also get jobs where you've never sent an application in, and all of a sudden you've networked your way into an opportunity. And we'll kind of go through how to do that in a little bit here. When you think about grounding, when you think about clearing your head, taking an inventory of what you're good at and what skills you have is really important when you match it up against the skills components of a job. So thinking about what skills complement jobs, thinking about things that you've never really thought of before, and really be open to opening yourself up to blowing up in your mind's eye what it is a dream job is anyways. You know, I don't need to beat the dead horse. It's a tough environment right now to be out there looking, and I sympathize with you, and I think a lot in the industry do as well. I mean, the world is kind of in it together. Be really self-aware, like think about what else you could do and how your skills and your academic experience really pivot into maybe something that you haven't thought about before. Take an inventory of what companies and industries excite you. I think we get caught up in the looking for jobs and looking at job descriptions and not thinking about the actual companies that are of interest to you. You know, networking with companies that you love will sometimes result in finding a role that wasn't even posted. Can everybody go on mute if that's possible?
Is that live?
And then my last comment on the start is getting your job or your resume template together. I say template because I think that you should have 2 to 3 versions ready. One should be really specific to, you know, like your skills, and then, you know, maybe parts and that can be compartmentalized, switched in, switched out to kind of talk to and really target like the types of roles that you're looking for. Make sure that you have it reviewed by at least 1 peer and at least 1 professional. So at least 2 people should be looking at this document. I can't stress enough how subjective resume review is. It's just another human being at the other end of the funnel. And you want to make sure that that document is as consumable a format as can possibly be and cast the widest net for anybody that's going to view it. All right, so some do's. I'm going to start with the resume first. I think that it's obviously a super important component of making yourself, you know, putting yourself out there, you know, it's obviously the document that everybody thinks about when we're looking for a job. Think about it as specifics and separators. Specifics include detailed project thesis work that's relevant. You know, keep in mind that template idea, like you want to revise it to speak to each job description that you're looking at. Keeping that shell format the same, but then kind of putting in some data, putting in some metrics, putting in some coursework that really speak to that specific job description will be super crucial in getting you through some of the filters that Ryan will talk about and I'll talk about coming up. Include your contact information, your name, your email, your LinkedIn profile, and your phone. When I say the LinkedIn profile, make sure it's your URL. And I'm going to show you at the end how to edit your public profile URL to make it so that it's not one huge long strand, so that it's nice and easy. I'll show you mine so that it's, you know, it's nice and condensed so that the hyperlink fits in really nice inside your contact information. Educational achievements, certainly that's kind of what you got to hang your hat on right now. I would only include GPA if it's extremely high, and then followed by your most relevant work experience as it relates to each job description. Separators, non-relevant work. And maybe relevant was the wrong word for this, but I'm talking about things like that show your grit, that show your hard work. I'm an old, I like to take my lunch pail to work every day, and we like to know that you guys do too. And a lot of those people that are reviewing those resumes like to see that ability to be malleable, to like take on new work, to think, you know, work outside of their job description. I mean, these are the things that are going to differentiate you from, you know, the other applicants that are out there. I love seeing resumes that say like that they ran an ice cream shop, or that they waited tables, that they did unpaid volunteering activities, and can even go so far as to say like, maybe how did they generate more revenue? How did they, you know, these are the little things that show that you've already thought about what your business acumen is. Little things like that will definitely separate you from the pack. Again, with the GPA, I put 5%, 10% fine, you know, again, subjective. It's got to be high for you to consider listing it. And frankly, when you don't list it, 98% of companies aren't going to ask you it anyways. And if there is a GPA requirement, they're going to list it in their job description regardless. So I would veer towards taking it out as opposed to keeping it in, unless you have a 4.0, put it in all you want. And then personal objectives and mission statements are always kind of at the top of these things. You really, really want to you want to make sure that those are directly speaking to the mission of the company in question, and how what you like and what that job has intersect. You really want to talk to that audience in a way that says, hey, I'm interested in XYZ company. I read your mission statement, and this is the stuff that I'm interested in, and here's why we're a great fit together. Alignment, visually, you know, speaking is super important. Make sure all your dates, titles, companies, etc. are aligned. Proper spacing, proper flow, crucial to a well-curated resume. You just keep those void and those white spaces at a minimum. Make sure everything looks nice and boxed in and framed correctly. Use a professional email address, please. I know I'm making a joke of lazydays420@gmail.com. I figured that would get a good laugh, but seriously, put your, I'm Jeff Smith, so I had to come up with some crazy long, mine's jeffrey.r.smith14 because there's a bazillion Jeff Smiths, but make it a professional email and make that inbox dedicated to your job search. You know, even somewhat off the cuff email addresses are not going to do you any favors. Use a font like this. I like this font. Hopefully you like it too. That it's generic and easy to read. Stay away from heavy scripts, heavy cursive, you know, really, really ornate, or you know, that stuff just doesn't work. Keep it real, keep it, you know, typewriter centric, those sorts of things. When you save your document, save it in a way that doesn't just say resume. You know, put your last name, your first name, resume, and date. Don't save it as some random slew of numbers. Just make sure that when you're attaching it, it looks professional. And then finally, use as many metrics as you can to demonstrate your worth via data. So, if it's sales and marketing, you want to talk about revenue. If it's engineering, you want to talk about, sprint cycles and, how quickly you got to MVP, whatever is relevant from a metrics perspective in your world. Those are the things that matter, and make sure that you're including it and keeping it front and center. Second part of the to-dos, target companies, not necessarily jobs. Now, I'm not saying don't go out and apply to jobs. I'm saying when you think about your strategy, think about companies before jobs. Think about like the sectors that you want to work in. Think about the companies that interest you, that create great products, that have great mission statements. Lots of people choose jobs for a variety of different reasons, and some of them totally veer off of the skills that they acquired when they're in their academic world. So for me, creating a company tracker, it doesn't have to be, fancy, Excel, Word, however you organize your day is fine with me. We have a bare bones template. If anybody wants to see it, I can send it out for you. That'll allow you to just organize and prioritize what companies you want to target. If your dream job is with a company that you don't align with, it's not a dream job. I promise you that. You want to find the people and the people in the company you work for are going to be far more influential in your overall satisfaction of your day-to-day job. And this stuff has been proven, than finding a skills alignment that is like apples to apples. My point is, it goes back to that first slide. Be open to learning and developing new skills that you never ever thought that you would even employ in a professional setting. And I know somebody said, will the slides be shared afterwards? And Joanna responded, they will. And I just kind of included here 6 bullet points of different lists that you can look up to compartmentalize some of those searches. So when we send this out afterwards, have at it. And finally, building your brand. I'm going to say it again. And I know your parents and your professors and all of your mentors have told you, privatize your social media accounts. Clean them up. Make sure that everything is private during your search, and probably, frankly, after a little bit. I look, even as an external recruiter. Keep them tight. I am amazed at what I find on a day-to-day basis. And in seriousness, I mean, adults, young folks like yourselves, again, the subjectivity of a job search is so crucial. Even if you don't think that something is risky or provocative, somebody else might. And it's just really key to keep that stuff clean and the things that are visible to be, PC. Create a great cover letter. And I go back to this idea of template. The cover letter, I think, gets lost sometimes in I have a resume and I'm just kind of like adding this document. It's become this weird thing that people feel like they need to attach, but they don't know what to do with it. My personal opinion, tell your story. Get fun with it. Like, include things you're passionate about. Include things that you think are fun, that will allow the recipient to start to get to know you a little bit. Like, they say, okay, hey, I know Jeff. I get a sense that he likes tennis and, he likes to go to concerts, and that's cool. I like that stuff. People relate to like things other than what we're going to do in our jobs day to day. And frankly, if you're selected to get an interview, it gives you a great icebreaker to start talking about something that's not professional in a scenario where it's your nerves are pumping, and again, it gives you that common ground. Customizing each letter to each job is super important, and really target those mission statements. Find the little keywords that companies use in their own mission statements and their about us sections. Mimic their tone. because the corporate speak that we get into, Hirewell has our own little language. Every company has their language, and it invariably seeps into those job descriptions. Definitely include some of that verbiage in your cover letters and your resumes to enhance that, hey, not only did I read your stuff, but I'm like-minded. If you've already started to build your LinkedIn profile, great. I think you're ahead of the game. I was chatting back and forth with another partner. Today, he posted something that said that was specific to new grads. Get out there, show us who you are. Again, I'm one person. When a young person comes to me on LinkedIn and really wants to know what I do and is interested and hungry and wants to know what I'm working on, I naturally veer to wanting to help that person. We all know that you guys are in a tough spot right now. You're entering the workforce in the middle of COVID. It's an unsettling feeling, and we all want to play our part in making sure that you're armed with the information that you need. But I can only go so far as to push you as much as you'll push yourself. So get out there, socialize, get that LinkedIn tip top, and Ryan will help you with that. Get a professional picture done. Professional picture, again, subjective, varies, but make sure it's representative of you. I don't think that professional means you have to be in a suit and tie or a blazer and all done up, or whatever professional is to you. Make sure that's conveyed. And I get that different jobs have different ways of visualizing that stuff, but maybe by profession, not grainy. Make sure it's a nice, clean picture, and that it represents your personality. And then finally, some don'ts. Don't have a generic or bland objective statement. Make it energetic and have fun with it. I implore, especially young people who don't know how fun to get with their document, go for it. If you want to work for a company that's going to have fun, if somebody can't take a nice, solid, energetic, fun statement in your objective, they're probably not somewhere you wanted to work anyways. Have people triple check your document, grammar, punctuation, conciseness. It all goes hand in hand with telling your story appropriately and allowing somebody to get through and navigate your document in an appropriate amount of time. Stay away from the references available upon request. It's a given. It takes up valuable space. It's not needed. Ryan's going to go through how to totally digitalize that in your LinkedIn profile. You can add links to that stuff if you want, but to me, it's a big waste of time. And then don't lie. I know it goes without saying, do not lie. You will get caught. Targeting and applying. Avoid blanket applications. And by that, I mean, don't just go out. I want you to apply to things that you're interested in and send your application in proactively to things, but don't just rely on that. It's time consuming. It produces minimal results. There's going to be hundreds of other applicants in the funnel. Make sure that you're doing and employing other things other than just getting your job scraped for the day and saying, here we go. I sent my 10 applications, I'm done. I promise you the people who are using some of these more proactive tactics are going to be finding better jobs faster. So make sure that you're part of that group. If you see something online that's interesting, send a thoughtful application. But when I say proactive, try to network into that company. Don't overdo it. Don't be pushy, but think about the types of people that are working. Maybe you're looking for a marketing job. You see a marketing associate. There's nothing wrong with pinging the director of marketing at that company and saying, hey, I tossed my application in. I'm super excited about it. What's the worst that can happen? It goes into the void. You do that 10 times, you're going to get responses. So make sure with your application, you're following up with one or two key stakeholders that you find on LinkedIn and sending them that pleasant note to make sure that they're aware of your interest and toss in one or two things that make you kind of stand out. Don't cast too narrow a net. This market is employer driven. It was a big pivot. In 2 months, it went from we had control of everything to companies now have control of everything. You guys are going to have to bend a little bit more than employers in today's market. So I'm not telling you what to do. Like, if you really want to get specific and limit like the scope of what you're looking for, that's fine. I just think that being open to and casting that wider net is going to not only get you into more conversations, but it might bring up stuff that you never even thought that you were interested in. And that's okay too. You know, getting any sort of real world business experience is better than none. And then, you know, again, finally with the branding and networking, don't underestimate the power of a great LinkedIn profile. It's a social medium that we as experienced professionals use more than I think new grads do. If it's bland and non-existent, you will be at a disadvantage. We do look for every single applicant. We look for a LinkedIn profile. Maybe not Facebook, maybe not Twitter, maybe not TikTok, maybe not Instagram, but we always look for a LinkedIn profile. And if you don't have it, you're at a disadvantage. And don't be robotic. If you can't show off who you are and what you like, you're going to be less likely to make a human connection. Push yourself to show off, you know, what you love about you. Love yourself, like be self-confident, talk about the things that you know are your strengths, and that human connection will parlay itself into like a more favorable skills assessment. Let's put it that way. All right, folks, I'm done with the boring part. I'm going to stop here before I intro to our lovely Ryan, but does anybody have any specific questions for me regarding any of that content? Okay, well, I will keep the chat room open. We're going to have another question section at the end of this, so there may be something that comes up. I am going to hand it off to our wonderful Ryan Brown. She is going to take us through the next part of this, which is optimizing your LinkedIn account. So hello, Ryan. Thank you for joining us.
Jeff. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I will let you introduce yourself.
Cool.
You're obviously more than capable, and I will go on mute and shut up.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here really quick, and then I will give a little introduction. So hopefully everyone can see this. And just as a heads up, I'm going to be flipping back and forth between this slide deck and also LinkedIn, just to give you guys some visuals and kind of a behind the scenes look at how recruiters like myself use LinkedIn to find great talent. So a little bit of a background on me. I've been with Hirewell for 2.5 years now. I've been within the recruiting space for about 4. And I kind of found my way into recruiting, I think through a pretty untraditional way, which most people do. I don't think anybody really graduates from college and thinks, hey, I want to be a recruiter. We kind of all find our ways here. I had a sales background and I loved the sales component and sales aspect, but I didn't really love pushing products and software on people. But I really liked creating relationships with folks and kind of found myself in the recruiting space, which is a pretty unique blend of both of those aspects. So it's something I really, really enjoy. And one of the things I wanted to mention too was that I really feel you guys right now with your job search. I graduated college in the middle of a recession, and it was a terrible time being a job seeker in that type of market. And I definitely didn't have the skills or the knowledge that I wish I did. And I'm hopeful that the things that Jeff has touched base on today and the things that I'll share with you as well will give you kind of a leg up in terms of really knowing how to start your search, where it's going to be important for you to spend your time getting ready. And hopefully that will be some helpful information from us. But I'll go ahead and get into it. So this component that we're going to be talking about right now is optimizing your LinkedIn profile. So like Jeff said, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile already, you absolutely need to have one. it's one of the more critical pieces for job seekers right now, because most recruiters are going to be utilizing LinkedIn almost solely to find folks. It's also a really, really great way to network and to find people that you can kind of build your network with, to build your brand. There are some other types of platforms or websites or things like that that are a little more granular that people may use for specific skill sets to find folks, but LinkedIn is kind of like your Bible when it comes to job seeking, and it's really where you want to spend a lot of your time developing your LinkedIn page and networking and searching for jobs. So when we're talking about optimizing your LinkedIn profile, there are a ton of different features that you can fill out. And we think they're all important, but there's some that are more critical and others that are nice to have. And we'll walk through those now, and I'll also give you some examples. So hang tight while we go through these slides, and then I'll go to LinkedIn to give you some visual. So the critical pieces, these are going to be the most important pieces of your LinkedIn that you want to be spending the most time on. Now, like I mentioned, all of the features are important, but these are going to be the areas that really set you apart from competition, that help recruiters or hiring managers find you on LinkedIn through various searches. So these are the pieces where you're spending the most time developing the content that's going into them. These are going to be the pieces that are really going to be the bulk or the meat of what makes your LinkedIn page great. So the header, this is one of the first things that people are going to see when they come to your page. It's also going to come up and kind of follow you around LinkedIn. So anytime you comment on something, your header is going to be that little tagline that's also associated with your name. This is a statement. I think you have like 130 characters or something like that to fill out this header piece. So you want to make a statement that really encompasses who you are, what you do, and how you can add value. And we want you to get fun and creative with this too. It's a great way for you to showcase your personality. I think my header is something like, I connect top HR talent with dream jobs, which is true. And you know, when you come to my LinkedIn page, you already know from the beginning when you step onto my page what it is that I do, where I can help you. If you're an HR professional, I'm a great person to connect with. One of my colleagues also put in something like, he's the #3 most sarcastic commenter on LinkedIn, which may also be very true. His name is James, and if you haven't already seen him on our Hirewell stuff, he's a good person to follow, very sarcastic. But those are just kind of some examples of like what you can do with this space. This should be attention grabbing. Your audience should know that you're fun and creative and get a little bit of your humor or personality in this piece. Next is your summary. This is your about section. And I think the best way to think about this is your digital cover letter. This is a place where you're going to add a ton of color and context to your background, who you are, what it is that you want to be doing with your career, and where things are going to take you. And I think the best way to think about this when you're starting to cultivate this piece of your LinkedIn is, what does my audience need to know about me? So when you're thinking about your audience, it's recruiters like myself, it's potential hiring managers, it's people you want to have in your network. So thinking about it from the sense of, what should my audience know, is a great way to start developing that type of content. And then finally, your experience. So this is your backstory between all of your work history. And this is more than just, here are the bullet points of the jobs that I've done and some of the day-to-day responsibilities. This needs to be more of a story. This needs to give context and really tell a narrative about your accomplishments and your skill sets and things like that. So when your audience, recruiters like myself, hiring managers, people that you want to start networking with, leave your LinkedIn page, they should know exactly what it is that you've done, the skill set that you have, the responsibilities that you've had, and your accomplishments. So those are really the key areas that you want to be paying attention to. And one of the things that I want to point out about this as well, from a recruiter standpoint, I can search these various areas on, so your summary and your experience, not so much the header, but your summary and experience. I can put in different things on the back end of LinkedIn to have key components of these pieces come up. So it's vital and so important for you to put as much context and color into these, so that you're really giving recruiters like myself a good chance and enough framework to find you and make sure that you're the right candidate for a role. So I want to give an example here really quick, and I'm going to go to LinkedIn, and this is one of our colleagues, so he's totally fine with me sharing his LinkedIn page. I actually used him as an example in a previous webinar that I did, but I want to go over the critical pieces really quick, just so you have an idea of where these sit on LinkedIn and can start to think about what this needs to look like on your personal page too. So we can see Don's, his professional photo. It's a nice photo. If we click on it, it gets a little bit bigger. You know, it's not grainy. It's you know, still professional, but gives you a good sense of Don being a fun guy too. And then this piece right here, this is the header section, what I was talking about before. This is the statement that truly follows you around LinkedIn on anything that you comment or like, and it's one of the first things that we see when we click on his page too. So Don lets us know he's in technology recruitment at Hirewell. He gives us a little taste of his humor too, saying, I can't code, but I probably know who can. So we already know, based off of this initial statement with Don, what it is that he does, how he can help, and we get a little piece of his personality with it too. So if we scroll down to his About section, we can see that Don gives us a really great background, not only on his history at school, so he went to the University of Michigan, but really kind of how he found his way into recruiting. Like I mentioned at the beginning, nobody necessarily plans to be a recruiter, so it's great that he gives us the history of like how he found himself here, what he enjoys about it, and he also talks about the specialties that he does specifically in technology recruitment. So he's putting in some keywords, which you'll see are very important on the back end for recruiters. But he's putting in some keywords so that we have a really solid understanding of what Don does. And he also gives us a little bit of a blip on Hirewell too, which is nice from a recruiting standpoint. Won't be totally necessary for you guys if you're not currently working, but it's nice from a recruiter standpoint that I don't have to do a bunch of research on the back end to understand what Hirewell is and what they do. And then finally, if we scroll down here to his experience section, like I said, this is a really key component where you want to put a ton of information and give a ton of color about your accomplishments, responsibilities, and skill sets. And Don does that here. I think in full transparency, he could probably add a little bit more in terms of metrics and data, but it's a really great start. And I at least know, reading through this, his experience at Hirewell and previous positions, exactly what it is that he does and where he's adding value at his company. So those critical pieces are really important. You can see on the normal kind of LinkedIn freemium version, what that looks like. Those are the pieces that you guys really want to start spending a ton of time developing. And I think just as it's important to have somebody take a second look at your resume and have people you trust, you know, giving you feedback, you want to do the same thing with those pieces too. So let's talk about what's nice to have. Now, I mentioned that we want you to optimize your LinkedIn and really fill out as much as you can on there, but these are sections that are important, but are not necessarily going to identify you as like a top candidate from a recruiter's lens, because we can't necessarily like search on some of these features, but they are really critical and important for you to have filled out for like building your network and for people to be looking at just your regular freemium LinkedIn page. So I want to talk about these and give some examples, but again, focus on those critical pieces and really developing those first and foremost. And then these should all kind of be like second priority. So the featured section here, this is a new section. I'm super excited about it. I think it's a really cool way for you to highlight yourself once people are on your profile. My suggestion is that you lead with something visual. So for instance, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. That's where I spend 99% of my day as a recruiter. I also do a lot of things for Hirewell through podcasts and webinars like this. So whenever I post something like this, and there's a video of me talking, or you know, an article that I've written for Hirewell or something like that, I post it in my featured section so that folks that are coming to my LinkedIn page can take a look at those important things that I've done, get a sense for who I am. It makes them realize that I'm not like a fake profile. They can get to know me and my personality a bit by clicking on something that's visual and getting to hear my voice. It just makes it more of a bit of like an interactive component of LinkedIn, which is great. One thing that I would suggest for entry-level job seekers, recent college graduates, is maybe it makes sense for you to post a quick video that's giving a little bit of a background on you, introducing yourself to LinkedIn, talking about, you know, what you're looking for in your job search, and then featuring it in this section. Maybe there was a presentation you did in undergrad or for an internship that was recorded that you can add there. That would be great too. Or if there's a way for you to upload, your thesis that you wrote, this is also maybe a good space for that to sit in. So those are just some ideas to start thinking of, because you might not have, the content that I have developed on LinkedIn yet. So those might be some good ways to kind of add some color in that sense. Next are your endorsements, skills, and interests. These are more like highlighted sections that add a bit of color to your background. When you're building out your LinkedIn profile, you can kind of just like pick and choose what things you may be interested in, picking and choosing your skill sets and things like that. Endorsements for me are a little fuzzy because basically anybody can go onto your LinkedIn page and endorse you for anything. For instance, a few years ago, a friend endorsed me for potatoes, which has nothing to do with professional settings, and I guess I'm pretty good at cooking them, but aside from that, it's like, what's the point of it? So it's great to have them, and I think it's kind of a fun and interactive way for people to like get to know you on LinkedIn, or maybe just like randomly send you some endorsements so they get those back. Again, it's good to have it, but I wouldn't spend a ton of time here. I think for the interest section, this is something that I would suggest looking at other people's interests to see if you can maybe find some icebreakers if you're going to send them a message for networking, or if you're going to have an interview with someone. Take a look at the things that they have listed as their interests, but nobody's necessarily going to find you because you've listed like one of your interests is Bill Gates or something like that, or the NFL on your LinkedIn page. We're not going to be finding job seekers jobs for those things. And then finally, your recommendations. So the way to think about these is your virtual references. So like Jeff said, like you don't need to have references upon request written on your resume. Everybody has references, and for the most part, everybody has good references. You're likely not going to ask someone to be a reference for you if they're not going to say something positive, or they haven't worked with you directly, or have some type of history with you. So I think for recommendations on LinkedIn, what you really want to focus on is people that you have strong relationships with. So maybe you partnered really closely with a professor when you were in college. Maybe you were their TA or helped on various projects with them. That would be a great person to reach out to and say, hey, would you mind writing something about the work that we did together, or the type of skills that I have, or how I helped you in X, Y, and Z way. I think it's also great to have previous managers or colleagues of yours. So Jeff mentioned if you have waited tables while you're in undergraduate programs, asking your manager to write something about you, saying how hardworking you are and how you're willing to take on anything and where you added value in those things. These are really great visuals to have on your LinkedIn, and to have people like myself, recruiters or hiring managers, take a look at your page and say, wow, this person maybe doesn't have a ton of professional experience yet, but look at the impact they've made in other ways. So I think that's something to take a look at as well. Again, these are nice to haves. You don't have to totally stress about these being absolutely, perfect, because they're not going to be the areas that recruiters are necessarily searching for you in. But let's take a look at Don's profile again, just so I can kind of highlight some of these areas and you can see visually how it will look on your profile. So go back up to Don's page here. And as we scroll down, we can see this feature section here. Typically, with these two areas here, there should be like a video clip. For whatever reason lately, LinkedIn maybe has something going on in the back end where it's not coming up, but I'll click on this really quick just so you can see. It takes us to a link of a post Don did in the past, a video that he posted specifically about a role that he was working on. So this makes Don a real person. We see who he is, we get an idea for maybe a bit of his personality, but if anything, it just gives us more context into who Don is, the work that he's doing, and that sort of thing. Now, if we scroll down a bit more, we'll take a look at skills and endorsements. So again, you're listing these out as you're filling out your LinkedIn, and you can, evaluate these from time to time and add new things. But like, I can go in here and add an endorsement for Don on anything. He's very good at technical recruiting. I don't have to actually know if Don is good at that or not to endorse him for something. I just can do it. So random people will endorse you for random things throughout the entirety of your LinkedIn stay. And then finally, we'll scroll down to recommendations and interests. So Don has had a few colleagues write recommendations about him and working specifically with him where he was able to be helpful, or the projects he helped on, and what it's like to work with him, which is great context to have. And then finally, interests. Again, we can see that Don has a few things listed here, but it's not really going to be a determining factor of whether or not he's a good fit for a role. It just is another area to fill out to add a little bit more color about who you are. All right, so we want to talk about next your LinkedIn profile and how recruiters like myself are using a membership version of LinkedIn to find you. So don't worry so much about the visuals of what this is going to look like. I more just want to walk you through how recruiters like myself utilize LinkedIn as a tool and some of the areas that we're searching for in order to find people. Now, I'm going to give just a pretty high level view of a specific search that a recruiter may do. So for the purpose of today, I'm going to do a targeted search on technology recruiters here at Hirewell. The reason why I'm doing a specific company search is we don't want to showcase somebody else's profile that hasn't given the okay for us to use them as an example. So I'm just going to be using my colleagues. And one of the things I want to preface before I get started too is all of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you are interchangeable. So I'm doing specific searches today to give you an idea of how granular recruiters can get, but we don't have to get that granular, or we could get even more granular on things. And while I'm searching for specific technology recruiters today, maybe I'm not doing a specific search for any type of position. I'm looking for entry level, recent college grads, and I don't need to get as specific. So I'll give you an example at the end, just kind of looking at how maybe folks like yourself could potentially come up in a search. But for now, let me just walk you through this, and then I'll give you a more realistic example for you guys. So on this left-hand side here, again, this will likely not be a side of LinkedIn that you guys see unless you decide to go into recruiting. But for myself, this is something I work in every single day. On the left-hand side here, you can see there's a bunch of custom filters. There's like a million more that could come up as well in an advanced search. But for the purpose of today, we want to look at a couple things here to just have a general targeted search. The first being the company, which is Hirewell. That way, all of the folks that are going to come up in the search are currently working at Hirewell. I've also put in a search radius of 35 miles from a specific zip code in Chicago. So right now we can see there's 49 total candidates in this search. All of these candidates that are coming up live within 35 miles of the zip code that I put in, or that's the zip area that they have selected on LinkedIn, and they work at Hirewell. So nobody else should be coming up in the search right now. And there's a couple different ways that we can search specifically within this to find technology recruiters. And one of those ways is with job titles. So we can do a specific search based on job titles. As you can see from this list, Natalie is a lead recruiter here at Hirewell. Rob is a technical recruiter. Katie is a lead recruiter. There's a ton of different titles being thrown out. So maybe I just want to be specific for technology recruiter. So I've already created a bit of a search here, a Boolean search. Again, these are kind of technical things you guys don't have to worry about so much, but I've created a search that pulls various types of titles that may represent technical recruiter. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into this job title search here. And as we can see, the search results have changed from 49 to 21. And all of the folks that are coming up in this search now are currently employed at Hirewell within a 35-mile radius of that zip code and have these specific job titles that I have put in. So you can see the reason why these folks are coming up. Rob, he's currently a technical recruiter here at Hirewell. Even Jeff Smith, back in the day, was a technical recruiter, which is why he's showing up. So because I haven't selected whether or not this job title search is current or past, anybody that has either been a technical recruiter in a previous role or is currently will come up in this search. So I want to show you a specific example of somebody's profile that has not really optimized their LinkedIn. He knows that I'm using him as this example, so his feelings are not hurt when I'm sharing what he should be doing. So we'll take a look at Matt, my colleague Matt here. He came up in the search because in a previous position, he was listed as an IT recruiter. If I click on his profile, we can see that Matt's header is recruiting engagement lead. That does not give me a ton of context into who Matt is and what it is that he does. I can probably assume that he's still in recruiting, but I have no idea from an outside perspective what engagement lead means or what areas within recruiting he's focusing on. So I'll scroll down and take a look. You see it jumps straight into his background. There's no about section, so I don't have any color to Matt's profile about who he is or his story. His digital cover letter piece is missing. And when I look at his experience piece here, it's specific about Hirewell. It does not give me any type of information about what he does specifically or what his responsibilities are, his accomplishments. So to be honest, he's probably not going to be somebody that I reach out to because I have no idea if in his current role, he's recruiting for IT folks or even what his recruiting focus is. So Matt's profile definitely needs to be optimized. He needs to spend more time creating his header, his about section, that digital cover letter, and really diving into telling the story or narrative about his work history and his experience. So I want to do another search with you guys, and I'm going to clear out the job titles piece. One of the other areas, and this is probably one that recruiters use more than anything else, is a keyword search. So keywords are pulled from your About Me section in your experience. If you are an entry-level candidate or a recent college grad that's applying to certain roles and you're seeing the same type of keywords kind of over and over in job descriptions, I would highly suggest trying to incorporate those somewhere within your summary or your experience, because recruiters like myself will plug in similar keywords for a search. And if you have those in those areas, we'll be able to pull that content into our search and find you. So I put in some various types of keywords that may describe a technical recruiter's background. And so I have things like tech recruiting or IT or technology or, technical recruitment, just various things. Recruiters will spend all day long trying to plug and play the right types of keywords into a search to find the right person. So I'll go ahead and copy and paste this and put it into this keywords section here. Now, I love keyword searches because it typically gives me better quality candidates, number one, and my search results are typically better. So you can see I went from 21 total candidates in the initial job title search to now 44, which is a lot better candidate pool than the initial 21. So all of these folks that are in this search now, again, have the main areas that we started the search with. They're working at Hirewell within a 35-mile radius of that initial zip code, and they have at least one or more of those keywords that I put into our search now on some section of their resume. It's typically going to be your About Me section or your experience. So we'll scroll down and see an example of another profile, and we'll find Don's here. So we already saw from the main version of LinkedIn, Don's really optimized his LinkedIn page. But what does that look like on the back end for a recruiter? So we'll click on Don's page and we can see his header right here, technology recruitment. I can't code, but I probably know who can. Right off the bat, before we look at anything else, I know Don's in technology recruitment. So he's probably going to be a great person for me to reach out to. But hopefully as I scroll down, I'll get a bit more information from him about what it is that he does. again, we can see his summary here. So that great explanation he's done talking about how he found his way into recruiting specifically within technology. You can see these bolded and highlighted sections. Those are the keywords that I put into my search, and that's why Don has come up. He did not come up in the job title specific search, but because he has these keywords in here, he's now coming up as a candidate. And even in his About Me section, I know a ton of information about Don's responsibilities, the areas that he's focusing in, and where he could add value. So going down to his experience, that just adds a little bit more context and clarity for me as a recruiter, which is great. So Don has really optimized his LinkedIn profile. So you can see not only from the visual on LinkedIn freemium version, which most folks are going to have, it looks great, the content's there. We can take a look at his page and we see automatically where it is that he adds value and whether or not he could be a good fit for a role. But from the recruiter standpoint, Don's given me enough information in these specific areas, so I know right off the bat whether or not Don's probably going to be a good fit for a specific role that I'm searching for. So one thing that I just want to talk about really quickly for entry-level candidates or recent college grads, these keywords are important. And like I said, if you're reading through various job descriptions and you're starting to see that certain keywords are being repeated, try your best to implement those in a very authentic way with your About Me section and experience so that it ties into the things that you have done. And so if recruiters are looking for specific people that have that experience or those examples, you're going to be one of those folks that comes up. Another way that recruiters may be looking for, especially recent college grads, is just by year of graduation. So make sure that you're putting in those graduation years too when you're doing your LinkedIn. I'll show you really quickly here. If I change the year of graduation to, let's say, 2018. We don't have a ton of people at Hirewell that are recent college grads, but we have 6 people that fall within this new year of graduation search. So recruiters will also use this to find you guys. It doesn't have to be a super targeted search for recent college grads, but this is just another reason why it's important to totally optimize your LinkedIn to make sure that you're paying attention to these areas and you're filling things out completely and accurately. So I want to recap a little bit on your LinkedIn profile. So like I mentioned, you should optimize your LinkedIn and fill out as much as you can, but you want to make sure that you're spending the most time on those critical pieces and worry less about the other sections. They're important, but they're not critical. So let's kind of talk about what we discussed earlier. The critical pieces, your header. This is a memorable first impression that follows you around LinkedIn. Anytime you comment on something, this is going to follow you as your tagline. Your summary and experience, these are so important because they're searchable by recruiters. These are adding personality and context and describing your exact experience. And then finally, your nice to haves, your featured section, again, I would suggest if you can, adding in, your thesis that you wrote, or adding in maybe a presentation that you did that was recorded, or even adding, a hello to LinkedIn, this is me type of video that you can upload. Endorsement skills and interests, important, but they're not going to delineate you versus somebody else in a search. And then recommendations, those are your virtual kind of references. So it's important to optimize your LinkedIn. I showed you on the back end what recruiters will see when you do versus when you don't, and why we may make a decision to reach out to you versus not. So just to recap on how recruiters search LinkedIn, optimizing your LinkedIn profile will 100% increase the likelihood of recruiters finding you and reaching out to you. The less content you have on there, the less likely somebody is going to reach out to you. The more you have, maybe you're the right fit for a role, maybe you're not, but at least we'll have enough color and context to know that. Recruiters can use 1,000 different ways and features to find you. Some of the most prevalent ones are going to be title, so the name of your position, maybe not as pertinent in regards to searching for recent college grads, but they could be. Keywords, this is the most important section that recruiters are going to be using to find talent. So making sure that you have words that are pertinent to your industry or profession, to the coursework that you did in college, the internships that you completed, things like that. Industries and schools, for entry-level individuals, we may be looking at specific colleges because they had great programs in certain areas, or maybe, you know, industries, maybe you completed an internship in a specific industry that would be great for certain companies. And location where you live, you want to make sure that this is accurate. And I think this is really important, and maybe a piece that folks sometimes overlook, because when we're thinking about location as a recruiter, we want to make sure that you can get to work every day and you're not driving miles and miles or in the car for 2 hours, where over time it's just not going to be a successful job for you because you'll hate the commute. So you want to make sure that you're putting in an accurate location, or if you're looking to move and you don't want to be looking at jobs in your hometown area, maybe you update your location to somewhere else so that recruiters are finding you. But again, you want to be really specific about this area where you live and making sure that, you know, you're updating all of these pieces accordingly. So the more detail that you put into these pieces, definitely the better. And we think that, you know, the more you optimize your LinkedIn and take advantage of the features that are there, the better chances you'll be found by a recruiter, or, you know, when you're when you're networking, folks will be more willing to help you too.